Scott, first of all, let's look at the recent numbers from Statistics Canada. How many Canadians actually moved to Alberta last quarter?
So, hell, for the third year in a row, Alberta is going to be the undisputed champion of interprovincial migration. Alberta's been like a magnet for new people moving here, particularly because of this unique combination of economic opportunity and especially housing affordability. And so, in the first half of this year, we saw, about 17,000 new people move to Alberta from other provinces on a net basis.
Wow, that's incredible. So I guess the last quarter was what, between 6 and 7,000?
That's correct. Yeah. Between about 6 and 7,000 just in the last quarter alone of people coming from other provinces to Alberta. And these are particularly young people that we're seeing that are moving to Alberta. And, but also around every age demographic as well. We think that there's this phenomenon taking place where young people are moving for opportunity and then perhaps their family members are following them because they want to be close to their family and they like the affordable housing that Alberta has to offer.
So from which provinces are we seeing the most migrants?
So, number one would be from British Columbia. And that makes a lot of sense when you think about the difference in particularly housing costs between a place like Vancouver and maybe a place like Edmonton or Calgary. In Vancouver, it's famous that homes are incredibly expensive. A single family detached home, I think, is up to about $1.9 million on average. In most places in Alberta, even in the major cities, it'd be well less than half that number. And so a lot of people are looking at it saying, hey, if I can get a great job in Alberta, I might be able to afford the house of my dreams, or I could sell my place in Vancouver and I could buy two here. So that's where we're seeing the largest influx from. In fact, last year alone, there were 70,000 people who left British Columbia, and Alberta was the top destination that those people moved to.
I'm glad you mentioned housing. I mean, Alberta now has a population of over 5 million people. We have a bit of a housing shortage here. Is this sustainable? Can we still bring in more and more people to our province?
Well, some of this involves the story of population growth. As I said to begin with, for the third straight year, Alberta is going to be leading the country in interprovincial migration and likely in population growth as well, at least on a per capita basis. But the texture of that has changed. For the last 2 years, Alberta has added over 200,000 new people. So that's kind of like adding a new Lethbridge and a new Red Deer, and then another new Lethbridge and another new Red Deer over the last couple of years. Those are really sort of superheated levels. What we're seeing in 2025 is that those levels have come down significantly, maybe into the range of about half that we've seen previously. And I'd like to suggest that that's actually probably a good thing. Housing in Alberta is still relatively affordable, but if you see superheated numbers of in-migration over a long period of time, eventually that's going to use up the housing stock. And so what we're seeing is that the home building industry has compensated for this. And actually in 2025, we'll likely see a record number of new homes built in Alberta. We're forecasting about 50,000 as a rough number when we hit the end of the year.
Now, Statistics Canada, Scott, says international migration accounted for an even larger share of Alberta's population growth in the second quarter, gaining over 11,500 residents from other countries from April to June. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it has many of the same characteristics. People have always come to Alberta for the famous Alberta advantage, and that is that combination of economic opportunity as well as affordable prices, kitchen table economics that just makes some sense. Housing affordability makes sense in that regard as well. Also, the lack of a provincial sales tax and a very low income tax. These are attractive to some of the best and brightest from around the world that want to come to Canada, and oftentimes they select Alberta. And we're thrilled to have them. Again, though, those numbers are down a bit from previous years. And I would suggest that that's probably good. We're seeing a normalization in some of these levels, still a magnetic attractor, but we're seeing unemployment rates a little bit higher, a little bit more elevated than we would probably normally like to see them. And so that's probably leading some people to be a little bit more selective, looking at their own skill set and determining if those jobs are available in Alberta at the moment. Because depending on where you look in the industries and the labor market, there can be a big difference in job availability.
Now, you speak to a lot of small business owners here in our province, Scott. How is the economy really looking for many of the locally owned and operated businesses?
I think for a lot of local businesses in Alberta, they're describing a sort of a sense of caution, and we're seeing that play out in the labor force numbers and in the jobs numbers. So businesses tell us that they're optimistic about the future. Things like major projects likely coming online. These really excite people, and they can create lots of jobs, particularly in areas like skilled trades or construction. However, Alberta's not immune and Canada's not immune to these sort of geopolitical and global headwinds that are coming at us. We're anticipating that next year, growth is going to be very, very slow across Canada. There are big trade wars on the go, as we talk about all the time, and commodity prices, especially oil prices, are being forecasted to be a little bit lower next year than we have seen in the previous few years. That's leading to this sense of caution. And I think that that also plays out in the jobs market, where you're seeing employers being thoughtful and cautious about their next hire versus just saying, hey, we need everybody we can get.
Scott Crockatt, VP of Communications and External Relations at the Business Council of Alberta. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you very much, Al.